guys. Welcome back to another exciting episode on the show podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. Our guest today is Matt Davis. Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on, Darlington. Can't wait for a chat.
Okay, so Matt, I would like you to introduce yourself to my audience.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Matt Davies. I'm a performance coach nowadays. I came from a background of working in banking and finance and reached a point where I just realized I was on the wrong tracks, as I explain it, and had my epiphany and now do something very different indeed.
All right, so our guest today knows that journey. So, for many high achievers, the warning signs don't always look dramatic. They look like working longer hours, ignoring health, sacrificing happiness, and convincing yourself that everything is fine until one day you realize something has to change. Our guest today knows that journey personally. After more than 2 decades in banking and finance, climbing the corporate ladder, he reached a breaking point. Years of stress and an unhealthy lifestyle had left him overweight, unhappy, and disconnected from himself. Today, we will talk about burnout, identity, transformation, discipline, overcoming fear, and why challenge can be the catalyst for becoming a stronger version of yourself. Our guest today is Matt Davis. Once again, Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hopefully going to demonstrate some of those qualities that you just talked about.
Okay, so take us back to your life before the transformation. What was happening during your years in banking and finance that led you to realize something needed to change?
Yeah, I sometimes talk about it as it's like I was sleepwalking. It's like I was doing all of the things that are kind of expected of us: good job, earn more money, have a nice place to live, upgrade the car, go on nice holidays. It felt like someone else was making all the decisions, and I was just going along with life and not really taking any control. Um, and yeah, none of it was horrendous, but I just had this like nagging feeling inside that someone else was making all the decisions and I had no control whatsoever. I was just along for the ride.
All right, Matt, you described reaching a breaking point mentally and physically. When did you first recognize that the life you had built no longer fits who you were?
Yeah, I just had a real epiphany moment. I literally just kind of looked in the mirror and thought, man, I think I was just turned 40. So I guess at that classic point in many people's lives where they reach midlife and think, God, is this it? Um, But I just looked in the mirror and thought, if I've got this bad from 25 when I was pretty fit and happy and active and doing stuff that I wanted to do, 15 years later at 40, I felt like I was living this kind of lie, someone else's life, and unfit, out of shape, unhappy. I just thought to myself, God, that's 15 years. I've got another probably 25 before I retire. How bad will it look like by the time I reach retirement? So it was just a real kind of spark moment where I just thought enough is enough. I don't want to carry on this path. So I went off and did something like crazy that I don't necessarily advocate everybody has to be quite so extreme, but I knew I needed a proper kick up the backside to do something that put me so out of my comfort zone that I would then change the direction that I was on.
Okay, so Matt, what made you choose an Iron Man as the challenge that would force you to change?
Yeah, I guess I'd heard of it and I'd always looked at it and thought how impossible it sounded. When I was back in my early 20s, I did a few marathons um, and always
Thank
enjoyed
you for
them,
that.
but did probably a few too many and got to the point where they were just a bit the same and a bit boring. But I'd heard about this thing called an Ironman where you go and do like an hour to an hour and a half worth of swimming first, and then you go and do like a 5, 6, 7 hour bike ride, and then you do a marathon. And I just looked back to all the times I've done a marathon and thought that at no point in any of those marathons did I think, "Oh, I wish I'd done 7 or 8 hours of exercise before I started," right? Um, So it just felt so huge and so out there and basically so impossible. I knew that that was the kind of level of scale that I needed to kind of really kickstart and make me almost be scared of the challenge and really whip me into shape.
Sorry about the technical issues.
But
So, what made you choose an Ironman?
yeah, so when I was younger, back in my early 20s, I raced a few normal marathons, and I enjoyed them, but reached a point where they were felt a little bit the same. So I kind of fell out of love with running. But I'd always heard about this thing called an Ironman, where you go and swim 2.4 miles, ride a bike for 180k, and then you do a marathon. And it just felt so impossible. I looked back at, I was lucky to do London Marathon and New York Marathon and a few others in Spain where I lived at the time. And at no point did I think at the end of one of those marathons, I wish I'd done 8 hours of exercising before I started. So it just felt huge. It just felt almost impossible as a challenge. I knew I needed something that was going to scare the hell out of me, basically. So that, I didn't just need to go back to doing something I'd done before. I needed something huge to give me that kick up the backside and that change of direction that I was looking for.
Okay, so Matt, at the time you signed up, you had no plan, no bike, no real experience. What was going through your mind when you committed to something that seemed impossible?
I mean, I had to change my identity, right? I was work was priority, family came second. I was very low down, a third, but really probably fifth or sixth on the priority list. So the first thing I realized I had to do, and that I had to step away from the idea that it was being selfish to put me back to the top of the list. Um, Motivation and excitement about a challenge like this lasts for so long, but eventually all those other challenges get in the way. I realized I had to change my identity. I needed to not think, oh, I need to get better at swimming and biking and running, and once I've done that, it's okay. I needed to try and change, like fundamentally change my awareness about myself, about who am I.
All right, so Matt, you have said the biggest transformation wasn't completing the Ironman, it was changing your identity. What does that mean?
I just I coach people now to do similar kind of transformations, and if you just try to coach the actions, they work for a while, and then the excitement and enthusiasm wanes unless you change. I do this with all my clients now. Unless you change the underlying beliefs about yourself, then that determination and motivation will just disappear. It's like New Year's resolutions that I can't remember the stat, something like 95% of all New Year's resolutions by the second week in January, they've been broken and people have gone back to their old ways. So that's that. Just changing your actions without changing your underlying beliefs isn't going to get you very far. It had to be the changing the identity, the awareness about yourself and the truth about yourself, and then really kind of finding a vision. What do I want to become? And it wasn't just, I realized if I just had a vision to want to do an Ironman, then I might get through it. But the minute the race was done, I'd slip back into the old ways again. I needed to change the vision to be, I am someone who can do this stuff whenever I like. So that felt more permanent, a more ingrained change that would keep going years later, which it has.
Oh, wonderful, Matt. Wonderful. So, why do you believe challenges is such a powerful tool for personal growth?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer that any challenge that genuinely scares you will prompt more action than not having that. If you just have good intentions without a challenge, it's hard to get into momentum. I don't think, I work with all sorts of people. They do all sorts of challenges. It doesn't need to be, it certainly doesn't need to be an Ironman. That's not for everybody. It doesn't need to be a marathon. It doesn't need to be anything. It needs to be something that is kind of really personal to the person I'm coaching. But I think getting into momentum is quite a trick to do. Once you're there, if you couple momentum with that change in your belief system, then it's really powerful. At the start, if you just try and change your identity without any kind of stick to push you along, it's hard to get going. If you just have the momentum from signing up from some kind of challenge, but you haven't changed the identity, then you'll get going really quickly, but it fizzles out really quickly. Combining both, having that massive challenge that's going to kind of scare you, telling everybody that you know, anyone that bore everybody that you know and tell them that you're doing it, gives you that accountability and the motivation. Then the identity change means that it keeps going after the event happens, after the challenge.
All right. So, Matt, what are some non-negotiables you believe high performance need in order to build a successful and fulfilling life?
So the biggest non-negotiable that I recognized in myself was putting myself back up on the priority list. I always kind of thought the job's more important. If I'm tired, if I'm run down, but I've got work to do, that will always come first. And it always felt like in the short term, that was the right thing to do, without really thinking about the fact that eventually you're slowly chipping away at your energy and your drive and your enthusiasm. And eventually that won't be the right thing to do. You'll end up not giving everything that you could. So that's fundamental number one, is putting yourself back to at or near the top of your priority list. I think the other fundamental for real high performance is constantly questioning that identity. So I help people go from their current identity, I call it 5 stages, through awareness and then truth and then vision, then execution and a change of identity. But then it's important to relook at that one and go through that cycle again and again. So it's not just a once, like a one and done thing. You change your current identity to what I've called the astute identity, which is the brand of the coaching business I'm building. It's about then putting that astute identity back at the top and rethinking through all their stages. So it's a constant process rather than like, I'm at the start, I want to do this change, and now I feel like I'm at the end and I've done. It's constantly reinventing yourself and evolving to whatever your world has changed to look like.
All right. So, Matt, for someone listening right now who feels trapped in a career or lifestyle just like you were that no longer fits them, what's one advice you will give them that can help them from today?
So the first thing to do, like, I see lots of people who make really rushed, snap decisions. They know they're not happy, but they haven't really thought out, well, what does happy look like? So they might quit their job or sign up for an Ironman or whatever it might be. They make that choice, and I commend that, and I think that's a great thing for people to do. But it's important that you've actually thought through a plan, right? Jobs, lots of us are in jobs that we don't necessarily enjoy. We've got bills to pay, we've got family to feed, we've got a roof to keep over our heads. So don't dive in on the back of being excited by hearing someone's story and go, yes, that's me, I'm going to go and do something crazy, unless you have a plan. You need to think through, what does it look like at the end if I go and do this? What am I trying to achieve? And having a really, really clear vision, which is the middle step on my process, is really key. Because I've seen it before. People quit their job and go to become a coach or whatever it is, but they haven't really thought it through, and they don't even know what it looks like at the end of the journey. So of course the journey can evolve and it can start to change as you go along, but it's really clear. It's really important for me to really think through what you want it to look like and try and test it out as well. I know so many people who've done something similar to me and gone off and done something completely wild, and they get there and they realize they don't even enjoy it any more than the role or the circumstance they feel like they were trapped in. If the change is, I want to get healthy, most people are going to enjoy being healthy at the end. So some journeys are really fairly obvious that you will enjoy it at the end, and you'll like where you've got to. But if you want to do something like I've done and completely rip up your career and build something from scratch, try to research and test out, in my case, do some free coaching, do some mentoring with someone who's a coach, do some offer to be an assistant somewhere or to help or to find out a bit more about the thing you're going to do before you get there and realize it was the wrong thing. I read a great quote the other day. about someone saying that they'd spent years and years climbing up the ladder, rung by rung, fighting their way up, and then realised when they got to the top that they'd leant the ladder against the wrong wall. So yeah, check the wall you're leaning the ladder against before you start climbing.
Okay, so if you could speak to your former self, the person sitting in that corporate job before the transformation, what would you tell them?
I think the biggest thing would be, depends, I guess it depends how much prior to the changes I made, how far back is the person I'm talking to. If it was right back when I was in my early 20s before I began climbing that wrong ladder, my advice would be just to try out as many different things as you could before you committed and went down a certain path. If it was the person that was, just prior to making the change, then the advice would just be to have more confidence in your decisions. I kind of reached that critical point. I reached that point where I knew I needed to change, and I threw myself into the physical challenge, to the doing the Ironman, and to improving my health and losing some weight and all of the things that come with doing a physical challenge. But I didn't. It took me probably at least 2 years, I think, to really be confident enough to know this is the career change and direction I want to go in. I started right away, but I don't think I really properly committed to it from the outset. So yeah, the advice to that person, that version of me around about 40, would be have more confidence in following your gut and doing what you want to do.
Okay, thank you so much. Honestly, a lot of people are in this. They have jobs they don't like. They are just busy getting overweight in all this. They have jobs that they don't like. This is common. And Matt, you were able to get this courage to do this. Do you think it's easy, or you think there's something extraordinary about you that made you muster this courage? Because you agree with me that a lot of people are in this,
Yes.
right? But they are trying to get out, but they can't get out.
Yeah, I don't think I'm extraordinary. I think I just got to a point where I realized I was about to break. So I don't, yeah, it doesn't feel like I was extraordinary at all. It feels like I got to a point where I didn't have a choice. And I think there's a lot of people out there that feel in a similar position. There's also a lot of people out there that feel that bad and don't make a choice. So but it doesn't make me extraordinary. It just means that I reached a point where I felt I had almost no choice but to take some action. I didn't know what the right action was, but I felt backed into a corner. Lots of people feel pretty disenfranchised with life, I know. And the change doesn't need to be as drastic as the route I took. I mean, I literally threw away an entire career, a whole way of life, lost quite a few friends along the way because my new version of me wasn't aligned with those people. So there was a lot to lose potentially. I'm thankful I can look back and be grateful that everything I did went through a rocky road, but I kind of got there in the end. But yeah, I don't feel like that makes me extraordinary. It just feels like it means I reached a point where I didn't feel like I had a choice.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt. This has been a very exciting episode. So finally, is there a question you wish I would have asked you that I did not ask you?
I would say, for me, it's not about the one event. It's all about the continuing that bit on. So yes, I went off and I did an Ironman, but the key for me is I didn't stop there. I went and did more races and changed direction. I did some ultra marathons. I was blessed to go to a little island off the west coast of Africa and race an ultra marathon across Sao Tome. So I guess my question would be, and this is the key in terms of changing identity, was what happened after you made that transformation journey?
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your incredible journey and reminding us that transformation often begins with a decision to stop accepting a life that no longer aligns with who we are. Your story shows that sometimes we don't discover our strengths until we change or until we challenge ourselves in ways that we never thought were possible. the goal isn't simply to achieve something difficult. Yeah, it's to become stronger, healthier, and more aligned through the process. So, for those who are listening right now who feel stuck and they want to get out from this, just like you, how can they connect with you?
So yeah, I'm sure in the show notes you'll put a couple of links to my social media so they can contact me there and send a message. And I'm always very happy to chat to anybody. If they're genuinely ready to kind of start their transformation journey, there's a link as well to fill in an inquiry form, and they can tell me a little bit about where they're at now, why they feel they're stuck, and what they would like to do something about that. So they can either just send me a DM on social media or fill in the form if they feel ready to kind of grab life by the balls and start to take action.
All right. Thank you so much. And for everyone listening, thank you for listening to this episode of Control or Be Controlled. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a review, share it with someone who needs inspiration to take the next step in their own transformation. Until next time, I will see you guys again. Stay intentional, embrace the challenge, and take control of your life before life controls take control of you. Thank you so much, Mark, for coming to my show.
Thanks again for having me.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
Cheers. Bye.